Good News Sports is brought to you by Faith Life Financial and Wise Choices.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to The Edge on Good News Sports. I'm your host, Glenn Allen. According to a 2003 Stats Canada study, dependence on alcohol and illicit drugs is much more common for men than women. As well, of the 450,000 reported compulsive gamblers in Ontario, the vast majority are men. Today on the show, we're going to talk about men and addictions. Well, let's meet the Edge panel here on Good News Sports, starting with the host of the Drew Marshall Radio Show, Drew Marshall, buddy.
The only thing I'm addicted to use. Hold on. Damn, that didn't come out right.
That's right. Former Hamilton Tiger Cat and Toronto Argonaut, Orlando Bowen, joins us on the set as well. I see you're still wearing the Argo colors. Is it still in your heart?
Hey, nothing but love for them.
My next guest is a recovering addict and a man who spent 25 years in federal prison. Please welcome to the show, Rick Osborne. Buddy, great to have you on the program.
Thanks for having me.
And last but certainly not least, our good friend, the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase.
Hey, Glenn, how are you, man?
Good, good.
What I say, guys?
Guys, welcome
You ready
to
to
the
go
show.
again, brother?
What's up, Holmes?
Okay, man. Ooh.
You take that from them. Don't let them push you around. Guys, the definition of addiction is habitual repetition of excessive behavior that a person is unable to stop despite its harmful consequences. We see that far too often. Ted, I'm going to start with you because addiction, drug and alcohol abuse, you've seen a lot of it over the years and lost some good friends in the world of wrestling.
In professional wrestling in the last 20 years, over 40 guys, some of them major superstars, a lot of them not. 40 guys in the last 20 years due to drug and alcohol abuse. Gone. Drug addiction.
That's huge. Yeah. Now, what about the juice? Is that
that's
considered the same.
That's
It's an
considered an
addiction
addiction as well.
Right.
A dependency. Yeah, a psychological addiction to it. But yeah, we've seen a lot of it.
Rick, let's. I want to bring you into the mix here because this is addiction, and your poor choices landed you in a situation. Half your life you spent in a federal prison. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, I grew up in Niagara Falls, 1970. It was a border town with a lot of drugs coming across, and I got caught up in it. And I watched a lot of people die. It's a terrible life. But let me tell you, 25 years in the pen, I never met one guy who said his life was better because of drugs. And when it came honest time, and it's a terrible thing.
When you see it rip families apart, and in Orlando, I want to bring you in too here because in the world of football, you see. You see the guys, I don't know what drugs are more prevalent. I mean, Drew talked about steroids. One of the drugs, if you will, that flies under the radar, I think far too much is alcohol. Yeah. And then the clubbing, and the clubbing, and the
that's what people say, right?
It is.
Yeah. They're addicted to alcohol, but I'm not addicted to drugs.
Yeah, well, alcohol is a drug. Yeah. You see it. You've seen players' careers end prematurely because of not being able to put the plug in the jug or be able to put the drugs down.
Absolutely. And, it's tough because, like Drew was saying, there's always an excuse, and I don't need any help because I don't have a problem type of response to it. So it's always very challenging, especially when it's someone that's your teammate, someone that you're out there with. You care about them. It's like family. So it's tough to deal with, especially when folks don't feel like they need any help. What
do you say to them, though? What do you say to them when you confront them? And what do they say to you in response?
Well, you have to really try to use a lot of tact too, because some guys will get real fired up when you.
Probably don't confront them when you're wasted, do you?
No.
Maybe not a good thing. So, have you ever done that? Have you confronted a buddy on the team and said, "Look, you're messing it up, dude"?
More so in college, actually, than as a professional. As in college, I think the group is a little bit more tight-knit in that everyone that's going to be there. As a professional, guys kind of come and go, so you'll see guys and be like, man, we should talk to him. type of thing. But sometimes you really have to pick and choose your times.
Two stories come to mind. One of a kid named Louis Spicoli. When I went from the WWE to the WCW out of Atlanta, we had done a TV taping in Macon, Georgia. Went back to the hotel in Atlanta. Everybody's going home for Christmas. I was sitting at the in the dining room having something to eat, and Louis came in the room. He said, "Ted, can I sit here with you?" I said, "Sure, Louis, have a seat." So he sat down, and there was a bowl of like peanuts or something, finger food on the table, and he had a couple of beers with him. So as he's drinking that beer, and as the conversation goes on and a little more time goes by, I realize that he's having a hard time finding his mouth with the peanuts, and next thing you know, bam, his head hits the table, and we had to wheel him up to his room, and we called the doctor, and he was okay. The next time I saw Louis,
well, what do you mean he was okay? He just smacked up?
In other words, he didn't die.
Oh,
he didn't die.
That's okay. Yeah.
The next time I saw him, I told him, I said, Louis, it's none of my business. You can tell me take a leap off a short pier. I said, but man, if you don't stop, you're going to die. And it was that same response, no, Ted, I appreciate your concern. He says, but I got this under control. He said it was just a bad night.
Denial.
And it was the denial. And about 2 months later, we were doing a Monday night live show, and he was supposed to be there. Matter of fact, the kid was just getting a break, and he didn't show up. And we got the call that he had been found dead in his apartment in Los Angeles, and what he had done is sedated himself so much. It's a big thing with the wrestling, somas.
Prescription drugs, yeah.
Prescription drugs and the booze.
Yeah.
And it wasn't an overdose of the pills, it's that he had so much alcohol in his system, he threw up. And when he threw up, he was so sedated that he basically drowned on his own vomit. And what a way to go.
Tough thing.
When Rick, when you, I'm going to get into the whole men and the Christian side to this topic, but before we do that, I mean, I talk about the alcohol flying under the radar. At least they're not out doing hard stuff, and at least he's home and he's drinking his beer or whatever. The other thing too is, in today, dealing with the pot. Yeah. The guys go, well, I'm only smoking a little bit of it, and even with they see their kids doing whatever. I smoked it in the 70s, and the THC levels were like 2%. They're upwards of 30 now, and it's a multi-billion-dollar business run by organized crime. And I really don't think that some people watching this show get that.
Yeah, and you know what? When I talk to kids, teenagers in schools, I say, hippie stuff is the most dangerous thing you can do at this time in your life. A 50-year-old man who's burning a couple in the garage, he's lived his life. He's at the end of his life. He's not really harming, when you get into individual harm. But a young person having amotivational syndrome at a time in their life when they need to be motivated and taking advantage of opportunities that are going to set up the rest of their lives. And then on top of that, criminal record. Want to put a glass ceiling on your earning for the rest of your life? Want to not cross the border? Get a criminal record. And secondly, it's not grown by hippies on the farm.
Yeah, and even talking about you say even, and again, I don't want to give the wrong impression, because the 50-year-old who's doing that is they're doing it for a reason, and whether it's alcohol, drugs, gambling, pornography, we're doing these things for a reason. While I can quit anytime. Well, if it's that easy to quit, then stop right now. Yeah. And they can't do that. I mean, you talk about it, and I'll step out here. I talk about the recovering from alcohol, cocaine, and putting the tobacco away. But, Ted, as an ordained minister, is it a sin to be overweight like I am? Yeah. Is food is an addiction?
Absolutely.
So let's talk about it as
the abuse of anything. But, addicts all say the same thing. They make excuses for it. It's not going to happen to me. You don't understand, man. You don't understand. And what they're all trying to do, irregardless of what your addiction is, you're trying to fill a void. You're trying to fill some emptiness in your life, whether it be, you had a poor family life, your dad beat you up, you were sexually abused, whatever that void is. I always give this example. My dad died unexpectedly in the ring, had a heart attack wrestling. I was 15 years old. It threw my mother into alcoholism. She gave up and quit. There I was in this little town. I had a choice to make, and it's a choice. Am I going to, I could have looked at my mom and I could have said, you know what, Mom, if you don't care about life anymore, why should I? You know what, I'm living in this little one-horse town now. This isn't fair. Woe is me, poor me. And I could have jumped right in there and been drinking just as much or more as she did. but I made a choice not to, and I pursued the goals. I set some goals in my life and pursued those goals, and that was to be an athlete, you know, and I chose not to. But you know, the void you're trying to fill, you know, as a minister, is a void that can only be filled by one thing, and that's the person in the presence of Jesus Christ.
If everybody medicates themselves with something, let's not kid ourselves. It's not just the drugs or the booze or the whatever. It goes right down to coffee or to junk food or to sex or porn. I mean, those are still. I think those.
Exercise.
That's heavy. Exercise.
Yeah.
Work. Sure. We all medicate ourselves with things. So I think
Your golf game.
my golf game sucks, dude. I am not addicted to golf.
But there's nothing wrong with having a healthy balance. My nutritionist, who is really disappointed who's very disappointed with me
I'd
right
like to
now.
talk to him.
No, actually, because I've
that
chosen
Jenny
not
Craig?
to listen. I've chosen to do things my way.
Yeah.
You know, I've listened when it came to, you know, beating the alcohol demon, the cocaine demon, and tobacco demon. I listened. I shut my mouth, did as I was told, and things got better. But I haven't done that when it comes to. I did for a little while.
Why?
You know what? For the other three things, it was life threatening.
Yeah.
And
You don't have the gun to your head on
when
this
I
one.
lost 40 pounds a couple of years or last year, it was because it was just after a mini stroke and it scared the crap out of me. But you know what? Things are okay again. And all of a sudden, well, it's not that bad. And I lie to myself. We lie to ourselves more than we lie to anybody else. Listen, we're going to pick this up right after the break. Continuing our talk on addiction. You're watching Good News Sports. Back right after this.
The preceding segment has been brought to you by Faith Life Financial.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Good News Sports. Glenn Allen, Drew Marshall, Orlando Bowen, Rick Osborne, Ted DiBiase. Today on Good News Sports, talking about addiction. And fellas, we've kind of gone through the gamut here, a little bit of our stories and talking about the various addictions that one can have. We're going to get into,
Is this where we talk about Tim Hortons?
Well,
What is with the moronic lineups every morning for these slaves?
we'll start with drewmarshall.ca.
All right.
Well, it is. Well, it was you and Ted. Yesterday we pulled into the green room.
Yeah.
And there's guys, there's sandwiches there. There's this, that, and the other thing. Where's the coffee? Where's the coffee? Orlando, let's talk
tonight
about.
we went to Starbucks.
Yeah,
before we got here.
Man.
Let's talk about. We want to talk about lifestyle. Yeah. And in beginning with that, we need to talk about balance. Yeah. And I know you're into the whole fitness, you have new fitness television program. Yeah. You're a former athlete, so talk a little bit about the balance.
Well, one of the things that's very important is that you find a way to strike a balance with all the things that are pulling on you as a male or just as an individual, period. So whether you have to really sit down and take a stock of those things that are important to you.
Invest your time into that.
Exactly. And then allocate the time, and really you have to be a good steward of your time in that sense, and make sure that things aren't getting out of hand or out of whack and you're not losing sight of the big picture.
Do you think men get addicted to stuff easier than women? Long
Yes.
pause.
Yeah, I would say so. I think it's more of
Why?
our makeup.
Why?
Part of it's more of our makeup. I think the way we keep talking on the show, it's the way we're wired. I think, especially in trinkets, you know, we love doing we're into the sports. You know, we become that sports addict. We become the home improvement addict. We want to fix the basements it's that type of makeup. Quit looking at me like that.
I'm just trying to follow, man. I'm thinking. I think we suck at
Addicted to my remote
communication.
control on Sunday afternoon in front of the football.
Yeah.
Right.
games.
Well, as guys, we all know we suck at communication. We're not exactly doing the touchy-feely stuff most of the time. We don't talk to each other. We don't cut through the crap in good conversations. We keep the conversation up here to surface level. And when stuff's grinding in our guts, we don't do anything about it except sit on it, right? We all grew up with dads that said, "Suck it up, princess," and shove her down, right? Did we not?
And so then, because we do that, then we go and we drink it away.
Yeah, we
go-
medicate it.
medicate it.
Yeah.
We medicate it in some way.
or find, we go gamble it away, or
Medicate it in some way. Let's talk about the environment, because the environment, you talk about a guy who may be working, and I always use this as an example. I know there's other occupations. We talk about sports and all that. Let's think about the guy working in the factory. You know, some guy who's dealing with stuff on the inside can't really open up to your buddy on the line.
Yeah.
And
But you can. It's just a little weird.
Yeah, unless you want to be the guy sitting in the corner during lunchtime. But it's tough to open up.
What's wrong with that?
Yeah, well, from experience? Rick, you talk about the lifestyle that you ultimately chose. For guys in that environment, number one, the environment dictates who you become, really.
Yeah.
And how do you get out of that?
It's almost impossible to get out of. Like I say, I'm an anomaly that I came out the other side and then pro-social. It's almost impossible to do it. And the environment does create you. You become a sociopath because you go into a survivor-based environment. I'm not making light of penitentiaries and, guys, deserve to be punished for natural consequences for their behavior. But they are what they are, and they destroy you. What
about, Ted, we were talking earlier, the rush of being that professional athlete. You mentioned a wrestler today who's still in the game, and you think his addiction is probably the fanfare, the attention.
Well, the woo man, Ric Flair. Rick. I'm 53 in January. Rick has got to be. Rick's 56, almost 57 years old, and still going. I mean, to his credit, he's in phenomenal shape for a man 57 years old, but he's 57 years old, and he's still out there bouncing around that ring because he thrives off of that adrenaline and the attention.
Let's. I want to turn this around now. Is the church equipped? If guys say, let's face it,
area.
The church is not equipped for people that, Rick and Ted, when we go into churches and we share our testimony, I'm sure the pastors are just going, oh no, because there's going to be a flood of people who are going to want that help. The church today is ill-equipped to deal with addiction and mental health illnesses. And people want to send the people to Christian counseling. The church needs to be picking up the ball there. Ted, where and why are we missing the ball? Or why are they missing the ball?
Well, they're not paying attention to it. They're not. They're just not doing it. They're too busy doing other things, in my opinion. And I don't know. I don't want to get on that deal again. I see some of these big churches building bigger sanctuaries when they should have been pouring this money into helping people like that. Feed the hungry, clothe the naked, take care of the widow and the orphan, and visit the prisoner in prison.
Bing, bing, bing.
Bang. And they're not doing it.
Yeah.
It's a social. We talked about the social club before.
Churches, 80% of the churches in America. I don't know about Canada, but it's kind of like it's not spoken, but it's understood. If you're not the right color, if you don't make the right amount of money, if you're not the right social economic income, and if you're not of the right class, and it's not spoken, but it's understood, you're not welcome here.
The Jesus in the Bible I keep reading about is a little different than the Jesus Bible I hear in the churches a lot of these days, because he was apparently, and the Bible says this, he was Lord of the losers.
That's right.
And I don't see a whole lot of losers in church these days. And the Christianity that I keep getting a whiff of reeks, it just is unbelievably brutal. And I remember a guy named Mike Yaconelli wrote a book called Messy Spirituality. And a big quote I use all the time is, messy spirituality is the Christianity most of us live, but few of us admit. And you get very little. What I hear in church on Sunday mornings is, I used to be an axe murderer, and then I became a Christian, and glory be, I haven't killed anybody. Isn't that nice? The people I still talk to and rub shoulders with, they're still struggling with, well, not with killing people, but they're still struggling with stuff.
Yeah. And the other big problem in Orlando and Rick, I'd like you to chime in on this. The stigma and shame for that guy who does want to come forward. Yeah. The judgmental attitudes that pour into our churches, and I'm not painting not everybody, because there's a lot of people that do care, but still that guy who says, you know what, I do have that problem. What do you say to him, guys?
Well, hold on. There's the other side of that coin where they do come with the big confession and the big, oh my goodness, I screwed up story, and they become glorified in the church. They do the circuit. They go around, and that's their shtick. I think there's something wrong with that as well. You know what I mean? Or did I miss that one?
I think it's a delicate balance, because you want to show that folks are real. We all have real issues that we have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. And how do you find a way to deal with that and to conquer those things,
way.
Right? Yeah.
A safe way.
And that's the thing, balance, safety. I talk about cutting. I became a cutter at 16, 17 years old.
Cutting your skin and stuff?
Yep. And that was how I dealt with emotional pain. It worked for me, as a man. And I talk about that, and it's the honesty, but you have to be discreet. Yeah. You have to do it at the right time. But there are people that have come to me afterwards, and it's opened doors for them. But the church has to be ready to pick up the ball And you're right, that does
Well,
sometimes.
But the other part of that too is what the church isn't ready for, and a lot of society. Like again, I'll go back to speaking in schools. There are some schools that are apprehensive because I'm going to talk about the fact that I was sexually abused, and all of a sudden, if there's going to be a disclosure, see, sexual abuse is one of the longest untreated epidemics in modern day history,
Especially in the church.
and exactly. So you want to try
Especially
to.
in the
So
church.
so
Can we just
you're
shoot straight
a
up?
man.
Yep.
You're a man, and you need to share that. You're medicating the past. And where in the world do you go when you don't trust anybody? Guys, help me out here. There's people out there watching right now that need some feedback.
Yeah, and you know what? I work in addictions, and you give me a really bad addict, and I'll show you sexual abuse almost 100% of the time.
Really?
I can go
There's
back
a
to
stat
it,
out there that says
And same
long-term
with women.
incarcerated males, 90% of long-term incarcerated males have been sexually abused prior to going into prison.
Yeah.
One of the problems with the church scene and not being equipped, I think, is the Bible colleges. Go back to the universities and Bible colleges, and they suck at training real life stuff. They really do. They're good at doing the God stuff and the Bible stuff and scripture memorization, church history, and all that kind of a deal. But knowing church history doesn't do one holy grunt of a favor when I come in with an addiction to pornography, masturbation. I'm cheating on my wife. I'm doing heroin. I'm Ted Haggard, struggling with homosexuality. It doesn't help me at all.
Mm-hmm.
So where does that go? We're under 2 minutes left in this segment. Let's talk about that person who, Orlando. What are your first thoughts when you hear something like this? What would you say to somebody who's struggling with something as a man, an addiction? What do you say to them?
Well, if they're big enough to come and to open up to me, that's a huge
It's
step.
like 50% or something.
Yeah,
of the battle.
it's a huge step
Yeah.
in the right direction. So hey, let's sit down. How can I be of assistance? Like there's people out there who are willing to help. There's people out there whose job is to help and who are experts in different areas. I'll do as much as I possibly can to make those types of connections and pray for folks and do that type of thing just to help them. Because when they come to you that way, I think the onus and there's an obligation to do everything possible to help, because you don't know what type of impact you're having on that individual. You could be changing a life right there.
You know what? We have about 10 seconds left in the program here. I just wanted to that person who's watching out there. Goodnewsports.ca is our website. Go to the website. If we can help you, we certainly will. Back right after this.
The preceding segment has been brought to you by Wise Choices.
Welcome back to the show. Guys, listen, if you're having any problems, please don't bury them or medicate yourself with drugs, alcohol, food, or pornography. As you've heard tonight, my guests and I have tried all that, and it got us nowhere. Find a place where you feel safe and share your struggles. For more resources, visit us online at goodnewsports.ca. Until next time, break free from your addictions and live on the edge with God.
Good News Sports has been brought to you by Faith Life Financial and Wise Choices.